When resizing objects in Adobe Photoshop, do you struggle with your objects distorting when you resize them? The secret to resizing objects proportionally has changed throughout the years. For most of the time I've been alive, that secret was always holding down the Shift key. If you held down the Shift key when resizing an object, then it always retained the same proportions. But let's see what happens now. If we click on one of our objects to bring up the free transform bounding box, and then hold down Shift when we click on one of these corners, then we see that it begins to distort, which isn't what we want. So let's go ahead and undo that. So if not the Shift key, then how do we constrain those proportions? Well, in Adobe Photoshop, now we don't have to do anything at all. We just grab one of those corners and don't hold anything else, and we can just resize our object and it will automatically retain those same proportions as we scale, no matter if we're making it smaller or making it larger. It works exactly the same way. Now that may sound like a subtle change, but when that feature first came out, it really confused both me and all of the designers that I worked with. We had been so used to holding down Shift for decades at that point, so when it suddenly started doing the opposite of what we expected, it took a bit of getting used to. Now that was for a pixel layer. What about other types of layers? So here we have a few different options. Up top here we have a text layer, and that will work exactly the same way. If we click on that, and don't hold anything, then it resizes everything proportionally. But if instead we held down the Shift key when we resize, now we see that it starts to distort our text, which can sometimes be useful if we're trying to condense our text. But most of the time you're going to want to keep your proportions the way they are. And then lastly, down here at the bottom, we have a smart object. And working with these is an even more recent change. When this change first came to Photoshop, pixel layers and smart objects worked differently. So holding down Shift on a pixel layer distorted the object, but holding Shift still protected the proportions on a smart object, which made things even more confusing that different types of layers worked differently. Thankfully, now even smart objects work that same way. So if we hold down Shift while we resize, our object distorts. But if we hold down nothing while we resize our object, now it holds those same proportions. So it's a lot easier now to keep track of what to do since the controls are now the same no matter what type of layer you're using in Photoshop. Now that said, this is still the opposite of how resizing works in other programs like InDesign or Illustrator, or just about every other program out there. So what if you want to make it work the way it used to and the way that other programs do? Well, Photoshop still lets us do just that. All we have to do is go up here to Edit, Preferences, and then we can go to General. Or we could hit Control-K or Command-K on a Mac to bring that up. And speaking of Mac, just a reminder that the preferences are not under Edit. You would instead click on the word Photoshop in your top bar and then navigate to Settings, General. Just a slight difference. So let's go ahead and click on that. And now with our settings up, the option that we're looking for is right here labeled Use Legacy Free Transform. That will change our settings back to how they used to work. So let's go ahead and click on that. And then we can go over here and hit OK. And now if we select one of our objects and then hold down the Shift key, now it's protecting those proportions. But if instead we don't hold anything down, now it does the opposite and distorts instead. So it really comes down to your personal preference. If this is something that trips you up when you move between Photoshop and other programs, then you can change these preference settings to make them more comfortable for you. But for me, I've gotten used to these changes over the years, so I just leave the preferences the way they are. That way, if Adobe makes any other changes in the future, I'm ready for them. And that's all you need to know about proportionally scaling objects in Adobe Photoshop. And now that you've mastered how to scale your objects, did you know that you can use the scroll wheel on your mouse to quickly and easily zoom in and out of your artboard in Adobe Photoshop? I have a video right here to show you how.